Welcome to Crime 11, a true crime podcast in 11 minutes. I'm host Name, and with me today is expert Name to take a deep dive into, well, a case that really shocked the world. Episode 9, Charles Manson.
Charles Manson, yeah. His name's practically synonymous with evil and manipulation.
It really is. For this deep dive, we're going to explore not just the crimes, but also what led Manson down this dark path. What kind of childhood did he have?
Well, you gotta understand, Manson's early life was incredibly turbulent. Born to a 16-year-old mother, no father figure. Poverty, instability, constantly shuffled between relatives and institutions. It's almost like he never even had a chance at a normal childhood.
It's heartbreaking. It sounds like a recipe for trouble.
Exactly, and it shows in his criminal history. By the time he was 32, he had already spent 17 years in prison, more than half his life.
Wow, 17 years. So prison was essentially all he knew?
And here's where it gets even more disturbing. When they were about to release him in 1967, he actually begged to stay incarcerated. He was terrified of the outside world.
That's incredible. I mean, most people would be desperate to get out of prison, but for him, it was like a twisted comfort zone. So how did this man, who was so afraid of the outside world, end up leading this infamous Manson family?
It's a fascinating story, really. Manson, despite his rough past, was drawn to the counterculture movement of the late 1960s, landed in San Francisco right in the heart of it all, and started attracting followers.
So he was a product of a broken system, but also managed to tap into the spirit of the time. So that's quite a paradox.
Absolutely, and his charisma, fueled by drugs, particularly LSD, helped him exert an almost hypnotic control over his followers. He was a master manipulator.
Chilling to think about this power he had to twist people's minds and bend them to his will. What were his motivations? Was it just about power, or was there something more sinister?
Well, Manson had this warped ideology rooted in racism and a fascination with the apocalypse. He believed in an impending race war that he called Helter Skelter, a term he took from a Beatles song.
Hold on, he got that from the Beatles. That's insane.
He twisted the meaning of the song into this apocalyptic prophecy, believing that Black people would rise up and overthrow the white establishment, and he saw himself as a key figure in this coming conflict.
So he wasn't just a criminal mastermind. He was delusional.
Yeah.
He really believed this stuff.
Yes, and his delusions were incredibly dangerous. He wanted to orchestrate this race war and then emerge as the leader of a new world order. His followers were completely devoted to him and willing to do whatever he asked.
Okay, so we have this deeply troubled individual, a warped ideology, and a group of devoted followers. Sounds like a recipe for disaster. And tragically, that's exactly what happened. What was the first major crime that Manson and his family committed?
It started with the murder of Gary Hinman, Manson's former music teacher, in July of 1969.
Wait, his music teacher? Why would he target someone like that?
There are different theories. Some believe it was over a financial dispute, while others suggest that Hinman had somehow disrespected Manson or the family. But what's clear is that Manson ordered the killing to instill fear within his followers and to solidify his control over them.
So it was a power move, a way to show them that he was serious and they needed to obey him without question.
Exactly. And the way they carried out the murder was chilling. Hinman was stabbed multiple times, and the word political piggy was written on the wall in his blood. It was a clear message, a taste of the violence to come.
That's terrifying. Like he was sending a warning to the world, but things were about to escalate far beyond a single murder, right?
Yes. Just a month later, the world would be horrified by the infamous Tate-LaBianca murders.
Those are the crimes that truly cemented Manson's legacy of evil. Can you tell us about the victims and what happened on those awful nights?
On August 8th, 1969, Manson sent 4 of his followers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to a house on Cielo Drive in Los Angeles.
That was the home of actress Sharon Tate and her husband Roman Polanski, right?
Yes, but Polanski was out of the country at the time. Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, was home with 3 friends, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, and Jay Sebring.
This is where it gets really hard to hear what happened to them.
They were all brutally murdered, stabbed multiple times, shot. It was a bloodbath. The word pig was written on the front door in Sharon Tate's blood.
Oh my God. It's just pure evil. Was there any motive, or was it just random violence?
That's one of the most disturbing aspects of this case. The motive behind the Tate murders is still debated today.
So there's no clear answer as to why they were targeted?
Not really. One theory is that Manson wanted to frame a Black revolutionary group and incite the race war he believed was coming. Another theory suggests that the house was chosen because it had previously been rented by a music producer who had rejected Manson's music.
So it could have been a combination of his warped ideology and a personal vendetta.
It's possible, but regardless of the motive, the Tate murder sent shockwaves through the nation. The brutality, the seeming randomness of it all, it was terrifying.
And the horror didn't end there, did it? What about the LaBianca murders?
The very next night, Manson himself, along with several followers, went to the home of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, a wealthy couple who lived in Los Feliz.
Why then did they have any connection to Manson or his followers?
No, they were seemingly chosen at random. Some speculate that Manson was trying to show his followers how to carry out a murder to desensitize them to violence.
That's horrifying. So they were essentially practice victims for his twisted plans.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? The LaBiancas were bound and stabbed to death, and words like rise and death to pigs were written on the walls in their blood.
It was like he was trying to send a message to the world to spread his twisted ideology through violence and terror.
Exactly. The Tate-LaBianca murders weren't just crimes. They were grotesque statements designed to shock and terrify the public.
Fine.
And the really unsettling thing is that the brutality wasn't just meant to terrorize. It was also performative. Remember Helter Skelter?
Right.
Manson believed these killings would spark a race war, and the messages scrawled in blood were designed to implicate black revolutionaries.
It's like he was trying to stage a macabre play using real lives as props. But if he was trying to start a race war, why target Sharon Tate and the LaBiancas? They weren't exactly symbols of racial oppression.
Right, and that's where the motive gets even murkier. Remember the music producer who had rejected Manson?
Yeah.
Well, he used to live in that house on Cielo Drive.
So is it possible that Manson was actually trying to kill the music producer and Sharon Tate and her guests were just in the wrong place at the wrong time?
That's a theory that's been investigated. There's even speculation that the Tate murders were intended as a copycat crime to protect a family member who had already been arrested for murder. It's hard to know for sure.
It's all just so senseless. So how did the authorities finally catch up with Manson and his family? These crimes were so high profile, they must have been under immense pressure to find the killers.
You would think so, but it's actually kind of a twisted tale. They were initially arrested for auto theft, not murder.
Wait, are you serious? They were literally getting away with murder?
For a while, yeah, it's almost unbelievable. But then one of Manson's followers, Susan Atkins, couldn't keep quiet. She was already in jail for the Hinman murder and started bragging to other inmates about her role in the Tate killings.
Classic jailhouse confession. It's amazing how often those lead to major breaks in a case.
Absolutely. Those inmate confessions were crucial in building the case against Manson and his followers.
I can only imagine the media frenzy that followed the trial must have been absolutely insane.
It was one of the longest and most sensationalized trials in American history. The whole world was watching as Manson, Atkins, Krenwinkel, and Van Houten faced the court.
And I bet Manson, being the master manipulator that he was, didn't make things easy.
Not at all. He carved an X into his forehead, later turning it into a swastika, and his female followers did the same. A visible display of their warped loyalty. He used every opportunity to try and control the narrative, to project himself as some kind of anti-establishment martyr.
It's almost like he was turning the trial into another performance.
Yeah.
He craved that attention, even if it was negative. But thankfully, the jury saw through his act and found him guilty. What was the verdict?
They were all sentenced to death, Manson, Atkins, Krenwinkel, and Van Houten, but then there was a huge twist.
Oh, there was a twist. What happened?
California abolished the death penalty in 1972. Their sentences were automatically commuted to life in prison.
So Manson escaped the death penalty, but spent the rest of his life behind bars. Did that time change him at all? Did he ever express remorse for his crimes?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our Charles Manson deep dive. We'll look inside Manson's life in prison and the lasting impact of his crimes on the world.
So we left off with Manson escaping the death penalty but facing a lifetime behind bars. Did prison life humble him at all?
Not a chance. Manson remained a master manipulator. Even from within prison walls, he granted countless interviews, keeping himself in the public eye and feeding his notoriety. It's almost as if prison only amplified his infamy, turning him into this dark, almost mythical figure.
It's incredible how he managed to maintain that grip on people's imaginations, even when locked away. What about his followers? Did any of them ever publicly denounce him or express remorse for what they did?
Some did. Susan Atkins, for example, found religion in prison and spoke out about regretting her involvement in the murders. But others remained fiercely loyal to Manson, clinging to his twisted beliefs even after decades of incarceration.
It's mind-boggling. To be so utterly under someone's control that you'd spend your life in prison defending their actions? It's a level of devotion that's hard to comprehend.
It speaks to the power of charismatic leaders and the vulnerability of people seeking belonging and purpose, especially those who feel lost or marginalized. Manson offered them a warped sense of family and meaning, a twisted ideology that gave their lives a sense of purpose, however horrific that purpose may have been.
It's a sobering reminder of the dark potential that exists within humanity. So what ultimately became of Charles Manson?
He died in prison in 2017 at the age of 83 from natural causes. But even in death, he remained a source of fascination and debate.
It's amazing how a single person can cast such a long shadow even in death. What do you think is the most important takeaway from all of this?
For me, it's a stark warning about the allure of charismatic leaders and the dangers of blind obedience. Manson's story reminds us to be critical thinkers, to question authority, and to never surrender our own moral compass.
Absolutely. It's also a reminder that evil doesn't always present itself in a monstrous form. Manson was in many ways a deeply troubled and broken individual, but his charisma and manipulative skills allowed him to exploit the vulnerabilities of others and orchestrate unimaginable horrors.
It's a chilling reminder that we must be vigilant not just against obvious threats, but also against the more insidious forms of manipulation that can lead ordinary people down a path of darkness.
Well said, this deep dive into the life and crimes of Charles Manson has been a harrowing journey, but an important one. It's forced us to confront the darkest aspects of human nature and the terrifying consequences of unchecked power and manipulation. Thanks for joining us.
It's a story that continues to resonate with us today, serving as a cautionary tale and a reminder to never underestimate the power of critical thinking and individual responsibility.
This has been The Deep Dive. We hope you found this exploration of Charles Manson's life and crimes insightful, if not a little unsettling. Until next time, stay curious, but stay safe.